All right. Welcome everyone to our first Monkey Business live stream. So I'll be your host today, and then we also have Sharkbait making his debut over here as well.
How's it going, everybody?
People know me, and I think they know you from a lot of your work. We just want to, give us a rundown about what you've done in Superstonk and some general idea of who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm sure some of you guys may have seen me around on the sub before. Ultimately, I first got involved back in the GME side of things, and when everybody's on the old sub still. And funny enough is that I had been bouncing around with GME and investing in them since about November. And it was around then I remember buying these $12 calls, or even probably even further back, buying these $12 calls, the infamous DFV calls, which I still kick myself about to this day. But I ended up taking the profits to buy a PS5. I'm like, I'm going to have GME pay for my PS5. And right now, those $12 calls would be worth so much more. I'd be able to buy so many more PS5s. But nonetheless, I'm now a GME holder, a happy one, we'll say. And I'm loving to be a part of all of this.
My side was just YOLOing in at 420, and then it evolved from there.
That's right, exactly.
So we've got a pretty packed stream, and some pretty interesting news has come out today. So we've just had the CEO and CFO announced. We've just had earnings released as well, and then in the GameStop newsroom. And we'll also be talking about future plans regarding NFTs and the digital transformation of GameStop. And then, not to mention, we'll also be switching over to the earnings release call live once it hits that 5 p.m. EST deadline. Switch over to their live stream, we'll listen in, and then we'll discuss a bit further after. So without ado, should we kick off the panel discussion and bring them on board, and we can start having a good talk?
Yeah, I feel like they dropped a bomb on us here right before we went live by announcing the new CEO and CFO. And we started digging into it just a little bit prior to going live here. But let's bring on some of the panelists. We're going to have a little bit more of a conversation here about what this potentially means for us and who these two individuals are, and ultimately what have they done in the career, and why has RC decided, and the rest of the board, why have they decided that these are the two right people for the job? So I'm seeing some pretty bullish things here right now. So pretty good sentiment so far, I think.
All right. So first off, we have Elevation. AV who will be bringing on. So he's got a fantastic knowledge in regards to these actual earning results stuff. I personally don't really dabble in that stuff. So thank you, James, for actually coming onto the stream today. Greatly appreciated.
Yeah, anytime. Happy to be here.
Sweet. Next up, we have, just start bringing them on, Red, and we'll introduce them as we go. We'll bring on Oath King. So Oath King's known for his psych background, so you might have seen psychology DDs being written around the point. So very much on that point, as well as the corporate governance side of things. So thanks, Oath, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Sweet. And I'll chuck him in the deep end, but I'll also invite ATO and Red Soul to join the party too, because, why not? And I feel like we don't really need an introduction.
The more the merrier.
Thanks, ATO. Thanks, Renzo, for joining us.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, let's kick off this conversation, because I think the main thing we want to talk about first is the CEO and CFO announcements, and we'll start working through that. So what's the general vibe on the CEO? Because what's his name again? It's
Matt Furlong.
Matt Furlong.
Yeah, so something that's becoming apparent to me, right, is that we already have, 3 out of the 12 different executives that are now currently from Amazon. To have 2 more additional people at very high levels being implemented into the team, also ex-Amazon, starts to kind of paint a little bit of a picture here, right? One that's oriented a little bit more around e-commerce as a focus. Now, it's not a surprise, as we have seen since beginning of last year, the overall increase of e-commerce as a whole has been quite substantial. The one thing that I have noticed here is the fact that we have the CFO, who has been he was the ex-CEO of Prime Video over at Amazon. Kind of gets you thinking about this little streaming component with GME and what we might be seeing in the near future. Any other thoughts, guys?
I'm loving it. It's we used to make a joke on sub saying, this is going to be the next Amazon of gaming. But with all these hires, I think it might actually be, becoming a reality at this point.
Yeah, it clearly says something, because you'd assume, like, throughout the interviewing process, the recruiting process, it's not just a one-way interview where they're looking to hire that person. That person's looking whether GameStop is the right fit for them. And for so many people to not just make a move away from Chewy to GameStop, because obviously they have that verbatim with Ryan Cohen already, but to make the move from Amazon over to GameStop really actually says something there, that they believe in the plan that presumably Ryan Cohen would have pitched them.
Right on. And something that I wanted to add here as well. So for anybody who doesn't know me personally, I actually came from the GameStop corporate side before. I had worked there as an analyst, and this is years back. But I can tell you how much that sentiment to this day has already changed from when I was there even. So back then, e-commerce represented 5-10% of all sales. It was a fraction. It wasn't a focus, even though we had this entire concept of Amazon Twitch Prime that had come out at the time, which was a massive competitor. But it wasn't really a focus for GameStop, right? It wasn't a really big concern at the time. But now we're starting to see that there's going to be, let's see, DFE walking back there, by the way. But basically, we now see this becoming a much bigger concern for them, and rightfully so. Now, I don't know if it was because it got kicked off by the pandemic and that kind of triggered this entire e-commerce movement internally, or if there's something else at play here. And as far as we know right now, and from what the financial results are telling us and what we're going to hear in just a couple of minutes here, well, about half an hour, is that this is going to become an increasing trend for them. Right, they're going to try to reduce their operational costs on site, and they're going to try to expand out their e-commerce side a little bit bigger.
For sure. If you've seen any of the jobs that they have posted on their site too, everything revolving around data science, everything's revolving around basically that shift, right, to figure out how to use their data in the best way, which kind of starts that phase out of the storefront, the brick and mortar, to have, not saying you can't do analytics as a brick and mortar, but it just helps you in the e-commerce platform, making everything digital, and gathering that data, hiring people that know how to code, application developers and stuff like that. It's definitely crazy seeing that. And it's not just one or two jobs. I mean, they're posting stuff like that all the time. Mm-hmm. It's definitely, it's interesting.
100%. Yeah, that's the really bullish thing for me as well, is that so I was there as an analyst and obviously overseeing a lot of the loyalty data and kind of building these profiles, these customer segments. One of the biggest trends that I saw back then was that they were starting to transition into a parental demographic. And so if anybody had visited a GameStop in the last half decade, you would have started noticing that there was a massive increase in things like Funko Pops, T-shirts, and other collectibles, and this is part of their loot category. But the problem is that even though that they were starting to increase this overall sales that they were getting from this loot category, and the margins were great from all those products, a lot higher than they were getting on software and hardware for that matter, it had a limitation in the sense that it took up physical space. And you start encountering a model that looks similar to Toys R Us, right? Where they had these massive stores to try to store all this product. GameStop didn't have that real estate. So what I'm happy to see now is the fact that they're starting to return back to this core demographic of male 18 to 34 was kind of the main, but this is now starting to change as well, as we're seeing it become a little bit more diversified. But we're starting to see them go back to what worked for them historically.
I find it funny that you mentioned that, because down in Australia, we have EB Games instead of GameStop, obviously associated. It's funny, they mentioned in the earnings release that 100% of Australian stores remained open during that time, obviously because we didn't suffer from the pandemic as bad as some other parts in the world. But they have the exact same thing where they do a store share. So it's an EB Games split in two, essentially, between all that pop culture stuff, and the other side you walk across, and then it's all the EB Games stuff. Personally, I walked in it. I didn't really find it that attractive, and that side, in terms of the pop culture stuff, was never really that busy in comparison to the EB Games side. So at least from a customer's perspective, years ago, seeing that was really just not off-putting in a way. I get its attraction, but it's just not my cup of tea personally.
Yeah, but I think that a lot of the over-the-counter sales is due to George Sherman, and it's not to say anything bad about the guy, but he has a background in brick-and-mortar stores, so in car parts and I believe Best Buy or something like that. And that's where his experience is. And when you go to a cash register, you have small stuff, and you have incidental buying. And I think that GameStop started with Funko Pops and stuff like that, because if you look at the counter, it's riddled with all little knickknacks and stuff that nobody really cares about, but it takes up a lot of space. And little kids will be like, "Hey, Mom, this is a minifigure of Goku. I want it." And the parent will go, "Well, it's only $2. Let's grab it." And it's an incidental sale. But like you, Sharkbait said, it takes up a lot of real estate, because at some point you're going to say, okay, this is bringing in a lot of money. We'll put it in more, but I can stack 400 games in the place of 10 Funko Pops, because 10 disc cases take about the same size as a Funko Pop. So at some point you have to question, am I a video game retail seller or am I a Funko merchandise seller? And I think that with George Sherman at the helm at the time, that the margin on it was so successful that they said, okay, never mind, we're just going to do both. And they're not consistently looking into one demographic or the other. They're just looking at what sells, and that's it.
So you're saying it's more of a scale issue in terms of moving to the next level from Funko Pops?
Hey guys. When is the report? When's the video coming out? When are they doing
30 minutes.
In 30 minutes,
okay.
Yep.
Okay. So, you guys want to go off the deep end on something real quick?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it live.
This is what Luri was trying to explain earlier. She spent a considerable amount of time talking with me prior to coming onto this. And there's a very big difference between the number of votes that are registered in meeting their majority vote and the number of votes that have been cast altogether. The information that was given in the report that we got today, which, by the way, report meaning like in this napkin, someone wrote down on a piece of paper or a napkin or something, saying that they've at least met the majority to be able to, they've met the majority, at least the majority of the votes that were represented by in person or by proxy. Okay. Red, do you have that document of 2017? Scroll down to page 2, right there. You can see the votes for, votes against. This is in 2017. Now, keep in mind the share price, I think, went up, or the total share count went up to, I think, 100 million in 2019. So we're just looking at these figures from 2017 right now, but keep in mind, as we go forward, that's going to change. You see what's unique about the far right? That broker non-votes. Okay, so those broker non-votes are not represented or don't have to be disclosed when they give that initial, we've met this many votes in order to meet the majority of all votes represented in person or by proxy. So there are certain instances here where the votes for and all the votes that are cast in total are not factoring in that broker non-vote. This broker non-vote is that DTCs represented by Seed & Co., this failed to deliver graveyard, where they allow the votes that are being cast to be represented at the shareholder meeting. But what they're not saying is, we're not going to include the ones that are held by brokers. And she went through all the documents on this to give, to show like what exactly is represented by quorum and what is represented within these votes with these disclosures. And you see literally from 2017, can you pull up 2018? You see that broker non-vote? So there were an additional 20 million shares that were not counted when they disclosed their initial, we are meeting the majority of the voters represented by in person or by proxy. These are broker non-votes the definition, which we were looking at earlier, broker non-votes, are literally held by different brokers who have accounts with other brokers holding rehypothecated shares and cannot be accounted for. So they're not included in that vote. And they've excluded this. In 2020, go to 2020. You want to see something different about 2020? What do you notice that's different?
No broker non-votes.
There's no broker non-vote. You know why? It was contested. They contested it. And therefore, when they made their disclosure about meeting the total or having an amount that was greater than the total represented by proxy or by in person, there was a contention about, because somebody was trying to place someone on the board. And so this year they had to display those results without showing the broker non-vote. Guess what's happening this year? It's not contested because there was no contest. How would that be? How would you say that? Nothing was contested?
Uncontested.
Yes, it was uncontested. There you go. Thank you. It was uncontested. And so those broker non-votes are going to be there. So when they're saying we have a majority, we've met the majority, or there's a greater than majority, or at least greater than 50% of votes have been cast to represent in person or by proxy, what we're going to see this year when they release that 8K is that broker non-vote section that's going to have God knows how many votes represented by all the apes that were not included in the news that we got today. And that news that they gave today was very specific because they mentioned we were able to meet the total amount of shares to be represented without including the non-broker vote. Is anybody else like, I'm literally shaking. Like, this is naked shorting. This is evidence of naked shorting that we're about to see. Yeah, show 2019.
So this is the definitive evidence that we're waiting for.
This is the evidence that we're waiting for. This is the 8 million increase to 20 million increase to 29 million or 26 million increase. And now in 2021, we're going to get 2020 results, or we're going to get the results through now. And you're going to see exactly how many votes are outstanding on that broker non-vote. So what she was excited about was the fact that this was like GameStop telling us what we're saying right now is we have enough votes without factoring these in to host the results or confirm the results of the meeting. But what we're going to see are all the apes votes in that 8K. Okay. So when we were looking for numbers this morning, it wasn't going to include that.
Ato, I think we just got the AK just released right now.
Yeah.
Is it out?
2021 numbers.
Oh, yep. Pull it up.
Literally live on stream.
Pull it up.
Let's see what it says. So we're going to react to this live with everybody here now.
Oh, I'm literally
going to call it.
Okay.
I think the AKs released were only in relation to the earnings and the CFO and CEO appointed. I don't think it was the actual submission.
Oh, it's right. Okay. So false alarm, I guess. No votes just yet.
Oh, man,
you're CEO specifically.
Oh, so terrible.
Still a big deal. Obviously, we have a new CEO right now. We've been waiting on that for quite some time. Naturally, of course, an AK would have had to been filed for that as well. I guess we kind of omitted that fact altogether because of everything that's happened already today.
Oh, but either way, right? So you see where
the voting 8K was actually released. Yeah.
For 2021.
Yep.
Within the chat. Who's the one Red sent?
So James, you're actually saying the vote was released.
Yep, I'm looking at it right now. It's the link.
Wait, so we do have it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we do. 7.3 million.
7.3 million non-broker votes?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Holy, that's like
triple, more than triple.
No, that's nothing. That is absolutely nothing.
I can actually say that a lot of Dutch banks and brokers wouldn't let you vote, and the AFM, the Dutch agency overlooks the entire stock thing. They released today that 30,000 people have bought GME, of which 40 people have bought in more than 1 million euros, and they are people who can't vote. How the hell can you explain that?
Oh my God, this is like so. Oh wow, like I don't even buy this right now. The fact that it was 28 million in 2020, which was up from 2019, which was up from 2018, which is up from 2017, and now you're telling me after everything that's happened and the number of people that hold shares, that everybody that voted were only represented by 7 million shares.
Nah.
That is ludicrous. That is ridiculous.
Not only that, didn't we have a couple of DD people a couple of weeks ago who even said it's possible to have some people say, like, for example, eToro saying, okay, we're going to vote for you, but you're not going to get your proxy numbers. And they don't have to put forward their shares. They can say, yeah, you voted, but you have no proof until you actually voted yourself on a GME site.
Wow.
Yeah, that's.
I don't
that's
buy it. I don't buy it. That's literally
looks
saying
like bad news.
I mean, I don't think it's bad news. I think it's just more of the stuff that they're covering up. Like, how much have we talked about the numbers that they've been reported? This is just brokers not reporting. It's they're going to pay a fine for this. That's like a couple million.
2,500.
Yeah, something. They're going to pay a fine for this, and FINRA's going to say, "Oh, this was non-disclosed," or the auditor, the independent share count, whoever's doing it, like the Carl Hagberg of this needs to like explain. I want to hear from him how this is possible. I don't get it.
Yeah,
it doesn't make sense to me.
Even with that number though, Ato, I mean, like we're still at 55.5 million total votes, right? Like this is still an outstanding number out of everything considered. I think that the broker non-votes, I mean, like is kind of something we should be looking at. But ultimately, I think that, I mean, like, where do we go from here with all this, really? Right? Like, how do we even bring this to light? We had the theory that was going to happen, but now that we're seeing it,
we need to get an auditor.
This has to be, yeah. I want to, like, who was the?
Which was announced. That was announced at the shareholder meeting today that there would be
not the public auditor, Deloitte and Touche, not Deloitte. It's their independent share. It's the Carl Hagberg. What it was the investor shareholders protection, where they would come in and they would do the vote tally, and people that were able to detect which were physical shares, which were actual shares, and the ones that were kind of spoofs coming in. Those people that have been doing this, because all of the evidence with the biggest outstanding short interest less than 6 months ago, how do you not account for that to be recorded in the vote? How do you account for the 180 or 200 million shares that are being traded daily? Somebody has to eventually own these.
Not only that, if you look at the options, look at the in the money and out of the money options right now. If you tally all of them, and we're already at 55 million, won't we exceed this by a huge margin if you take them along with them? Because we also had a theory a long time ago that they're hiding their short position in long OTM puts and calls.
Yeah. But so where are the votes going? Because they're being cast, right? I mean, people are getting, like, you're getting that confirmation from your broker. Are they just not sending the votes there? They're being.
But that's what we heard. We heard that from who was it? I believe it was Wes who even maybe mentioned that, or Lucy, that it's very possible that they might just not send your vote altogether. That you will submit a form and then it gets lost, disappears.
It's just, that blows my mind.
For everybody who's just joining in right now, we had a couple different developments here that has happened since we went live in this stream alone. So we had a new CEO and CFO announced, both who are ex-Amazon people. Sounds like a very bullish sentiment towards the e-commerce side of things, which we're really happy to see. It bodes really well for the business in the future. Then we also had the 8K drop for this, where we're seeing now what the sales results for Q1 were, which also look really, really strong right now. We see them increasing their overall e-commerce sales and reducing the overhead, which is fantastic. And they've also confirmed that they have 700 million on hand to use as a business with zero debt. I mean, like, this looks amazing for us, right? Because ultimately, at this point, they can do whatever they want. And lastly, the last component here is what we're seeing now with the votes. So this is what we were waiting for. Now, the unfortunate part is it looks like there is a little bit of more dirty play that we're seeing here, where a lot of these broker non-votes are not following the pattern that we had seen historically over the last few years.
Well, it looks like, I mean, I'm looking at this right now, and I have no idea how that can be there, but it's just me saying, according to everything that we've seen, this looks like more of the same. I can't prove that that's happening, but to go from that 4-year run up to a third of that, or a fourth of that, I don't buy it.
There's no possible way. And let's be honest here for a second. If you take 140% max short interest, and people came in, they bought, they held. Even if you take 10% as day traders, for example, because there are always people who will take opportunities in that. Even if you take 10% out of that, and you look at everything, how is it possible that somebody got out of a 140% short position?
And that's what they were willing to admit, right? So remember, Ren, when you look at FINRA, for example, we saw that percentage reach like 300%, right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, like, yeah, how do you exit this position? Like, there is no way you actually are able to escape, right? And so that's why we all believe in what we're researching here. It's the reason why we don't, we're seeing these votes, and we know that there's some layer of BS behind it because it's impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. We know there's shady, mischievous stuff going on behind the scenes. There's no doubt about that. I think we've proven it many a times over the past 6 months. And given that we've given them 6 months to prepare for what is going to be the ultimate evidence of overvoting, there's no doubt that they knew this long before us, long before we even discovered that this would be an issue. So they would have had plans in place for sure.
Yeah, so the overall sentiment, I'll say, knowing everything that we've seen here, is still, for me personally, quite bullish. I'm not swayed by these things. I think that we see what's happening in the option chains. We see how many there is far out in the money ahead of time, and all of them combined still paint a story here for us.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that, guys?
Yeah, I'm interested to hear what they say on the video. I want to hear what they talk about in the video.
I honestly don't know that they'll address the voting at all in their earnings report. They're more likely just to go over their 10Q, which looks great. They've done a lot to improve the company. About what you were saying earlier. Yeah, about what you were saying earlier with the collectible sales. They've actually almost doubled the revenue in that market compared to the hardware and software, which is software's gone down about the same. Hardware's gone up a bit, but we had multiple console releases last year as well. So that's to be expected. But the collectible sales is actually what, to me, is the most interesting. Because if they're expanding on that market, they're making a lot of those point of sale purchases, a lot of those things that they're focusing on selling things that go with the games as opposed to the games themselves.
Yeah, it was always kind of the plan to increase the average basket sizes. That was the original intention for these kind of like loot category products, was to be able to add in additional things alongside with the game. Now, of course, this transition to e-commerce, we were talking about that physical limitation of space that they have in their store locations. Well, in e-commerce, that's not really a problem, right? So I'm glad to hear that they are increasing that further, because that is what brings in the margins for them. You compare something like 15%, like 10 to 15% for new software, like any game, to compare it to like the 30% that you see in things like loot, right? Like the toys and collectibles. So for them, that's a bullish signal, I think.
Yeah, one thing I would like to see them do actually with the collectibles market is push farther into that. I think there's a big open space for them, and I've been saying this for a while, that most like kind of your local game stores where people go to play like TCGs and tabletop games and stuff like that, they're all family owned. There's no national chains. And as a competitive TCG player myself, if I go to a random city in the US and I don't know where to go. I got to spend 20, 30 minutes looking it up, finding their schedule, everything. If I knew GameStop is like, I can just go here, play a tournament, there's a huge market for them in that space.
James, do I see a Magic deck box behind you on that shelf?
You see probably 30, 40,000 cards. I've been a competitive Magic player since 1995.
So those binders are filled with those cards, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing is GameStop also has all those connections already. Like they already sell all the products. So adding in the things that keep people in the store and bring them to the store would be very easy.
That's an interesting view, actually. Using it as a retention measure, more time in store, more time browsing. It's a very good point.
Yeah, they also have the opportunity to do like national like leagues and championships as well, getting support from the product manufacturers, both in the video game space, the TCG space, and like the whole collectible market. There's a huge interest in just like tournaments and like entry fees, and these are all recurring revenue models because people will come back and keep playing at the store. You develop a community. And based on what I saw in the transformation of their actual storefronts, they're building GameStop into a place to play games as opposed to just like buy them. So if you keep people in your store, the next time they want to buy something, they just come in, they're like, oh, I need this. Oh, I see that. This new product came out. Let's buy that. It's very easy to sell them things when they're already in your store.
Fresh in their minds. I would like to comment on just two trends that were noticeable over the past year and I guess and a half due to the pandemic, right? Collectibles in general, right, have been a hobby for many people because, you know, absent sports, absent, you know, games that you can go to, how are you going to interact with your hobbies, right? Well, certainly when it comes to video games, you can purchase them online, e-stores, buy them, right? But with collectibles, these physical items, like there's a reason why Funko Pops went up, right? People work on a collection as a way to pass time, right? Another trend that I noticed in recent weeks is Pokemon cards, right? There's this whole, I don't know what to call it, but on Twitch, right? You're live streaming opening of packs, and if you get like a shiny Snorlax, you know, people buy into that stuff because it connects with their nostalgia. But it's also a response to staying at home for the better part of the year.
Yeah, that's actually the majority of my Twitch viewership.
There you go.
Physical cards. Yeah, as I do like box openings, I do that. I go down to my local game store, pick up a box of cards. I do like a weekly series of like, here is how you build a deck out of like random stuff. So
now,
like that is a very popular thing.
And just imagine a day when things reopen and you have like box openings in person, right? You're sitting around a table, you know, you're with your friends, you all purchase random packs, and you're going to see who has the better pulls, right? I remember when I was into Yu-Gi-Oh cards, that was a thing where my friends would just dump lots at 7-Eleven. You know, we buy our pop and our Slurpees, but we always make sure to pick up packs of cards just so we can say, okay, who's going to get the shiny this time, right?
The TLDR is that apes are nerds, right?
And that's the beauty of it.
You know, so we all have a brand. We see what they're doing with the business. I think that that's important. But ultimately, I think from what we're seeing and what these documentations are showing us, and I'm hearing a little bit of concerns of people talking about what these votes are saying. To me, this doesn't change anything, right? Ultimately, we know that these failure to delivers, they exist. The option chains are loaded. It's not going to change. Right? It doesn't matter what information we get displayed. Ultimately, the thesis stays the same. And there's plenty of different DDs that were written around Superstonk that help confirm this ideology. So ultimately, that's what we have to refer back to.
Yeah, it's going on. Like there's no way to get around it. Like that's happening. We've seen these to come out every single day for these people getting caught not submitting the right flag or not giving the right information, or FINRA going back and saying you messed up 2.5 years worth of blue sheets. Like we know the information is able to be withheld, and it's almost kind of confirming the fact that they have had such a strong reduction, because those shares can't go anywhere. They can't be, they have to go to somebody, and the voter turnout can only be greater this year. How could it possibly be less? And
Not only
so where do they have to go? Like who's voting and who is not having their shares counted. It does not make sense.
Yeah,
Not only
unless
that,
they're not showing it.
It's when you consider the institutions that are holding shares this year compared to last year, compared to the year before, not much has really changed in the grand scheme of things in terms of the whole portion that they hold. But the huge portion that has increased is retail, which just does not seem to be represented.
It's not. It's how can it be less?
Yeah.
How can it be? It was over 100%. Last year was over 100%. This is what Carl was talking about. This is what Wes have been talking about. This is what Dr. T have been talking about. The cycle of how this works is you have shorts that are sent into the market, which we know is happening. They are not showing that they've located a borrow for that short, which is happening. And then finally, when it's failed to deliver, the SEC just lets them kick the can down the road, or they can just hide it in these options. They can just say, we're gonna create a synthetic share through a call and a put in the future. And most of the time, as Wes has said, that gets torn up. People don't even actually cover with those. So the fact that you have still, it's over 100% voter turnout. Last year, when you include those non-broker votes, it's getting to be over 100%. And this is not uncommon. So if it's already over 100%, and you have everything that's happened this year, with no doubt there's more volume held by retailers, how is that less? So the fact that it's not what we would expect it to be just tells me it's more of the same.
I think that's confirmation bias, even more so than what we already had. It means that we are dealing with corrupt force. And I mean, honestly, to all the apes watching, you don't need to look far. Have a look what's happening with the reverse repo rates. Have a look what's happening with inflation, what's happening with SPY. Right now, we're reaching all-time highs. You know, the reverse repo rate today alone reached 502 billion, the highest ever in history. Do we need more confirmation bias that there's something wrong going on?
Yeah, I got one for you. There's a guy on Twitter I'm friends with, Annihilation God, and he usually analyzes the daily volume going in, going out, what's happening, and that's only during the pre-market. And he's found out that 99% of the time, 53% of the daily volume at minimum is short volume. How does that compute with the numbers we're getting? I don't know.
That is the question.
It doesn't. How can you have? This may even be. It may even be getting to the point where, like, when you start to go down too far on one side, you start to lose sight of what the bigger picture was that was wrong. You know what I mean? Like when you start to say, if you're following your logic and you're following all these fines that you're getting, this is how your behavior is built. This is what we should expect. But if we don't go back up here and say they can go so many different directions, right? You start to drill into much. The problem is, why are the votes that are held more than the votes that are held in a non-broker vote? Why do you have to have all of these different categories of the vote? Why do I have to have, if I own a share, I should be represented just as anybody else. It's plain and simple. So if that's represented by this in-person and by proxy thing, okay, then everybody should account to that many shares that are available to be voted on. Why do you have this other category over here, broker non-votes, which is literally the accounts that are held between brokers for people that have the definitions that we were just going through were on the proxy statement from 2021. Those are brokers, or from 2020, or those are votes, those are shares that are held by brokers at all of these people that we've been talking about, UBS, Citadel. They're shares that are held at these different broker dealers, and they don't include them into that vote. Why aren't they included?
I don't know.
Up until this point, I always thought the vote that came out, when you see a percentage, you think it's the percentage of everybody voting of the entire shares of all the shares outstanding.
We're dealing with something nasty here, and it's as simple as that. Ultimately, guys, to me, everything that we've heard thus far is still bullish. The traffic
it's bullish.
is still
It's
set,
just insane,
right? And just to echo what Ryan Cohen said, buckle up. I don't think this is over. I think very far from. And I think that we're going to hear some pretty amazing things in the earnings call coming up here, which is just in about a minute. So we're going to slowly start switching over to that here.
I'm stoked. Okay, let's do it.
So we've got another minute or so. In the meantime, I think they can serenade us with their nice elevator music. wonderful.
Oh, nice.
They've never changed this music. I'm fairly certain it's the same track that they've used for the last decade. They sure know how to cater to their demographic.
Yeah, right. Quality. Yeah, I think J Smart had to drop for something.
What they really should have done is they should have had an interactive game similar to what they had on the NFT page.
Yeah, the cat on the moon.
Something that we could all play in the meantime. That's something we'll be talking about a little bit later on in the show as well, for everybody that's watching. So we'll be covering a little bit of that NFT piece on top of everything. Maybe if we're lucky, they'll say something about it. I kind of doubt it, but we're going to try to give our opinion on what might be happening from this NFT side of things, because I do feel like that's going to be a game changer on top of everything else, too. And we see that the price here is actually starting to climb up here on GME as well. We're back up to 281 as of right now.
Oh, did it drop after hours?
Oh, 285.
Yeah, it was good news. So what do you expect?
Yeah.
Anything less than the floors.
Yeah, we had obviously people do the traditional sell the news type of scenario. If you've been trading for a while, this is nothing new. I mean, we were expecting that we would get laddered despite any news that came out whatsoever. We could have announced that GameStop has a cure for cancer and we would have been laddered. It's just the reality of it, unfortunate, right?
If they announced that, it'd be like $50 right now. The better the news, the lower GameStop goes. That's how this works, right?
Well, think about it, because you're going to have something come out. Like, why do we expect it to be broadcast in the media any different than the daily performance on the stock market? Like, GameStop can go up 100%, and if it drops 20, that'll be the news. You know, it's like 20% low on daily whatever. If there's one piece of news that comes out in this report, how do we, aside from the people that are watching this and that can hear us talk about it, or the people that know how to analyze these statements, how can you get the good news about the company? Like one of the big things.
Up? We're at 501 right now. It's not up yet. Okay. They must be running late.
Yeah. One of the big things I saw on that, the sales were up 25% over 2020 first quarter, even with 12% store closures. And on top of that, it's through a pandemic where your orders are basically pickup, curbside pickup. Like, that's huge. Quarter 1, 2021. I thought that was great news.
Oh,
that they cover stuff like that.
So who do we think is going to be taking the call today? So do you think it's going to be ex-CEO still?
I would say. I mean, has he been replaced? It wouldn't be fair to have him not.
Yeah, he's been replaced.
I mean, theoretically,
I know he's been, but is he out right now, or is it effective?
That's a good question.
But I mean, it can be kind of weird to have him go through all this and then not give.
Right, let me check.
Quarter 1.
No, their start date is July 12th.
Oh, there you go. So yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
And Mr. Furlong starts on June 21st, 2021, and Mr. Recupero starts on July 12th.
Okay.
Yeah, there's another couple interesting talent acquisitions that have taken place, like the head of blockchain, for example, at GameStop. This is a new person, new role, never existed before. We'll be discussing him a little bit in after the meeting as well, and going into a little bit more depth as to what might that mean for GameStop and why are they bringing people like this on board.
It's annoying. We can't really start a new topic because we're expecting it to start any second now.
Yeah.
We're paying close attention here, guys.
The company intends to use any net proceeds for general corporate purposes, as well as for investing in growth initiatives and further strengthening the balance sheet. Before I review the financial results for the quarter, I'd like to comment on this afternoon's press release announcing the hiring of a CEO and a permanent CFO. Matt
Why can we not
Furlong,
see
our
anything?
incoming CEO, has an impressive background from Amazon,
It's just audio.
where he most recently led Australia and oversaw significant growth in that region. Matt is a proven e-commerce leader with a firm understanding of how to delight customers. His focus, intensity, and work ethic will set the right tone atop the company as we begin shifting to a growth phase. He also brings a strong understanding of brand and retail from his tenure at Procter & Gamble, where he began his career. Mike Recupero, our incoming permanent CFO, also joins us from Amazon, where he was most recently CFO of North American Consumer and CFO of Prime Video. Mike spent nearly 2 decades at Amazon and held a variety of senior finance roles across the organization. His experience helping business lines scale and achieve market leadership is exactly what we need going forward. I look forward to working with Matt and Mike to ensure seamless transitions in the coming weeks. I also want to take this opportunity to thank Diana Jage for her guidance and willingness to take on additional responsibilities during her time as interim CFO. Diana will return to her role as Chief Accounting Officer within the finance organization once Mike officially joins. Now turning to our financial results. Net sales for the quarter increased 25.1% to $1.3 billion, compared to $1 billion in the prior year period. Importantly, we achieved this growth with a roughly 12% reduction in the global store fleet due to our strategic dedensification efforts and the continued store closures in Europe during the quarter due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Overall, gross margins were 25.9%, down 180 basis points from 27.7% in the fiscal first quarter last year. The decline was primarily driven by an expected increase in mix of lower margin sales. From an SG&A perspective, our reported SG&A expenses were $370.3 million, reflecting a decline of $16.2 million or 4.2% versus the reported SG&A in the first quarter last year, and an 880 basis point improvement on a percent to sales basis. Adjusting for severance, transformation, and other costs, our adjusted SG&A declined $29.5 million or 7.7% year over year and reflects nearly 10 percentage points of sales leverage. We reported an operating loss of $40.8 million compared to an operating loss of $108 million in the prior year first quarter. Adjusted operating loss was $21.6 million compared to a loss of $98.8 million in the prior year period. Income tax in the first quarter was an expense of $1.3 million, which compares to an income tax expense of $50.4 million in the prior year first quarter. Our effective income tax rate for the quarter was 2% and impacted by valuation allowances recorded in prior periods, as well as the mix of earnings across the jurisdictions in which we operate. We reported a net loss of $66.8 million or $1.01 per diluted share, compared to a net loss of $165.7 million or a loss per diluted share of $2.57 in the prior year first quarter. Our adjusted net loss was $29.4 million or 45 cents per diluted share, compared to adjusted net loss of $157.6 million or a loss of $2.44 per diluted share in the fiscal 2020 first quarter. In the first quarter, we continued to focus on strategically dedensifying our global store fleet, closing a net total of 118 stores in the quarter. At quarter end, we operated 4,698 stores across the globe. Turning to the balance sheet, we ended the quarter with cash and restricted cash of $770.8 million, $186.9 million higher than the end of the first quarter last year. Overall debt levels compared to the first quarter of last year were reduced by $504 million and reflect the redemption of $202 million of senior notes due in 2021, the voluntary early redemption of $216.4 million of 10% senior notes due in 2023, and the $135 million paydown of the company's asset-based revolving credit facility. At the end of the quarter, we had no borrowings under our asset-based revolving credit facility, no long-term debt, and $48.1 million of short-term debt, which is a low-interest loan from the French government offered to us through the equivalent of the CARES Act in the U.S. related to the response to COVID-19. Capital expenditures for the quarter were $14.7 million. In the first quarter, cash flow from operating activities was an outflow of $18.8 million, an increase of $30.5 million compared to an outflow of $49.3 million during the same period last year. In terms of our outlook, we remain optimistic about both the emerging console cycle and our future. We recognize business risks remain elevated due to the pandemic and post-pandemic uncertainty, and we are not providing specific annual sales and earnings guidance. We are pleased with our start to the year and strong sales in May, which were up approximately 27% year over year. We remain focused on positioning GameStop for long-term growth as we prioritize delighting our customer and providing a differentiated and superior customer experience. Finally, given this is my last time speaking with you as GameStop CEO, I want to share that I'm very proud of what we have accomplished over the past 2 years, including navigating the pandemic and positioning the company with strong liquidity and an improved platform for growth. It's been a privilege to lead so many dedicated and talented team members who collectively possess tremendous passion for the gaming industry. We have helped bring stability and strength to the business, including by densifying our store footprint, reducing cost and debt, and returning our company to growth. I also want to take this opportunity to thank our customers for their belief in us and an amazing group of shareholders who have so demonstrably exhibited their support for us. I look forward to working with our newly appointed board and leadership team going forward. Thank you again for your support and your interest in GameStop.
This concludes today's conference. You may disconnect your lines at this time. Thank you for your participation and have a wonderful evening.
Cool. Short and sweet.
Like always.
So as we had heard, that will be Sherman's last meeting as he will be stepping down for the new CEO, who's going to be starting on the 12th, was it? So just
the CEO the 21st and the CFO on July 12th.
So just in like a few short weeks, 2 weeks from now. So ultimately, yeah, what do you guys think about the call? What are we thinking about what we've heard?
It's nothing new.
Yeah, but what expected. Odd again that there was no question and answer period. That's 2 in a row that they haven't had a Q&A.
Any thoughts about why they might be omitting Q&A at this point?
Yeah, because if they do anything right now, they say something that the lawyers didn't write or anything, anybody can go after him. So from a legal point of view, they're just covering their own ass. It's normal.
Yeah, totally fair. I once again will reiterate this. Everything that they're saying, I mean, bullish as hell, right? Is that we obviously understand that they are reducing the amount of costs that they have to take on the business, and they've increased the amount of cash they have on hand. I mean, I don't see a reason to be worried.
No.
No, I wasn't looking for anything to be worried about. I wish I would have liked some more information on, I want to know the nitty gritty. Obviously, I want to know, yeah, we're making this partnership, we're doing this, we're doing that. I want the big news. I would love to have it. But from what they were saying, it was good. It sounded like the losses were getting smaller, and just being debt free. I don't think people realize how freeing, obviously, that is to a company.
Well, they cut their operating loss in half. Like, that is huge.
Yeah, and from the year prior, their actual their overall recognized loss was like
it was actually
98 to 40 something. Yeah.
It was more than half, which is fantastic. Another thing that I liked in their 10Q is that they have less merchandise on hand. And under the assets, their inventory went from last year 650 million to this year's 570.
It could be shortage. It could be issues with getting stuff too.
Yeah, but to me, having less on-hand inventory is good because you're not spending as much money to carry that.
I understand. Yeah. Not arguing with you at all. It's better to not have it stored up because you want to sell it. You want to get out of your store. The issue is also right now. Have you tried to buy a lot of stuff?
There's tons of supply chain issues.
I'm waiting 3 months for a telescope right now. I'm just just wondering how, with these chip shortages and everything else that's going on, really want to know what they're going to be doing about it, and if that's going to be a potential hindrance for them. Just getting stuff into the stores and getting it stocked. It's one thing to build the supply chain, and it's another thing to be having global shipping issues where we have the supply chain, we know how to get the products where they need to go, but we need to force or we need to focus on making sure that everything coming in the door is coming in the door. That's the only thing I can think that could be bad about not having inventory. If your demand's going up, you don't have fun of the goods. Could be something.
Yeah, and I also kind of expected to hear something about the GameStop Microsoft partnership, that they have a multi-year partnership they signed up for, and I've not heard anything about it except for it's there.
They may be wanting to keep that under wraps until they've like fully implemented it, though. Like, I think that's a lot of what's happening with the transformation is they're just keeping a lot of their plans secret because they're trying to be first to market with stuff. Like if they're going after the national kind of game store chain, if they're going after the ability to buy and sell your own like Steam codes or something on through a GameStop platform that doesn't exist right now. So them saying like, "Hey, we're working on this," just pushes everyone else to try and beat them. Sure. Whereas if they roll it out and then in their next earnings call say, "Hey, look, we released this and this is how well it did," they beat the market.
Yeah, and I think a really big aspect of that as well, when you think about what the Microsoft partnership was to include, a large component of that was going to be using the Azure different services for their data capabilities. And as we now understand, we've got a new CTO who's ex-AWS, right? So I mean, like from Amazon's perspective. So it is not surprising to me that perhaps there are some sort of modifications to how exactly they're doing things. Or I could be entirely wrong, and maybe there is this, deeper plan that they're still collaborating on. They're continuing to do this rev share that they originally had planned, and they're going much deeper into it.
Yeah, I just wish they said something. That's the only thing that's actually annoying me about this entire saga, is that Ryan Cohen has a philosophy of, I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to do. You're going to see what I'm going to do, and you'll be amazed. Like I heard from people who were in the annual shareholders meeting today that he supposedly said that they're doing something that nobody has done before in retail. So buckle up, or as my father used to say, buckle up. And the thing is, it's anxiety-inducing and at the same time exciting, because what is he going to do? We don't know anything.
So I feel like the accounting side, the folks on this panel, in this room, do a better job of analyzing numbers than I ever could. Like, I got to applaud you for just being quick with the numbers reported and making sense of them, right? But I want to challenge.
I have the 10Q in my face.
Yeah, I want to push back on what Renzel just said about this philosophy from Ryan Cohen being sort of nebulous and hard to decipher, because I picked up both from this call and the previous one, Sherman using the term delighting customers. Now, to my knowledge, that was never Sherman's term. It was actually from Ryan Cohen. And I've noticed that term in the letter that he sent, original letter to GameStop. I noticed it's a term that he used when he described his operations with Chewy in past interviews. So I made a comment to my friends after the previous call, not this one, and I said it's almost like Sherman was acting like a mouthpiece at the time already, right? Like channeling the Ryan Cohen in that transformation process. So Renzel, I hear you. I wish there was more news, and delighting customers remains the forefront strategy.
Yeah, that's the best way to keep. That's the best way to keep customers these days, because it's not about the product you can offer with video games. I mean, if you go to Walmart, Target, everybody can offer you the same Call of Duty game, but the experience that you're getting while buying it or being in the store, that's what it's going to set GameStop apart in my book.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at, I saw people on Twitter, there was a guy yesterday, UPS lost his PS5. GameStop immediately responded with like, "Oh no problem, we're on this, they lost it, you're getting a new one from us, no problem." That instant satisfaction. Yeah, if you if you did that at Walmart or Target or Amazon, even, they'd go, yeah, it's not our problem. Fix it with a shipper. But GameStop, they step up and take care of the customer, and that's a huge part indeed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, from what I've heard, they also take care of their employees pretty well as well on the customer service aspect. The people are generally happy to work there, and that goes back to Chewy as well, where people working at Chewy have been very much excited about going to work every day, and that's something that you don't see a lot in large companies, where the kind of low-level ground floor employees are actually treated pretty well, and that to me just makes that to me is more important than really what their sales are, even, because that makes me want to be a repeat customer if they're treating the people that work for them well.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It never ceases to amaze me whenever I see a post like a Chewy customer will say, "Okay, my pet passed away, unfortunately," but not only did Chewy give a refund, but they just said, donate the dog food or donate whatever to a shelter, right? And we're going to send you a bouquet of flowers and a card, right? It's like, you don't need to do that in terms of business, but they're going out of their way to do so. Right? So.
Yeah. Hey guys, I got to drop. Love going over this with you guys. Thanks. Still bullish.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Holding. Yeah. I'll holler at you guys later.
I appreciate your insight as always.
Yep.
Cool. And on that note, we're actually going to slowly start pivoting here. Oaf King, James, thank you both for joining us here today. It was a pleasure having you guys on and getting your insights and expertise as well.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Yep.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks for having us.
So with that being said, we're going to slowly start pivoting the conversation a little bit, and we're going to bring on a couple of new guests. Right now, we have the Indian dude who's going to be joining us, who is part of the Bull House. If you're not familiar with the Bull House group, they are a fantastic little group of people who host classroom sessions for apes who are brand new to investing or even a little bit more seasoned, and try to elevate people to higher levels of education or higher levels of understanding of what's going on with everything. So as we understand, there's so many different factors at play here. We understand that there's the broader market that we're dealing with, and everything from the Federal Reserve to CD & Co, for example, and the DTCC, alongside what we're seeing on the macro level or micro level, with GameStop specifically. So what I wanted us to pivot into specifically right now is to talk a little bit more about this NFT component with Ethereum in the mix and what the potential for that might be in the near future. So we're going to go ahead and bring these guys on here.
Hey guys.
Welcome, the Indian dude.
Hey, how are you guys?
Pretty good, pretty good. So yeah, as you have possibly have heard, obviously we see that there's a new CEO and CFO in the mix. Some pretty interesting blend of talent here so far. But the one thing I really wanted to touch on, and I had done a little bit of research, and the Indian dude, I know me and you already had chatted about this previously, but specifically about the head of blockchain at GameStop and kind of his background. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So thanks again, Sharkbait, for introducing me here. So yeah, I think it is a very smart move, and I use smart rather than a more bullish word I would like to say. Smart is because this is a time of a pivot for the financial institutions and financial markets in general. Cryptocurrency is just starting to, I would say right now, pick up steam across the world as well. So I think this is a great time on how GameStop is trying to move towards blockchain technology being the number one way for companies to pivot into a true digital cryptocurrency transformation. And given Ethereum is more popular, getting more popular than Bitcoin, I think Bitcoin's losing a little bit of steam, but given today's El Salvador announcement, it's pivoting. It's going back and forth. It's like a seesaw kind of situation. So I'm excited. I feel there is more to come from GameStop and what it's trying to do with. I think you guys are mentioning about the NFT piece. Yeah. There's a lot more coming. I think they haven't dealt all their. We haven't seen the cards yet. So I'm just waiting for no pun intended, the other house of cards that is coming with the cryptocurrency situation. There's a lot more to it.
I believe so too. And sorry to interject here. So we also have Lady Lovestonks, who's just joining us in right now. Also a great part of the Bullhouse group as well. So welcome, Lady. Oh, she's not ready yet. Well, we'll have her here in just a second. So just to kind of continue on that NFT piece here, what I did want to talk about is that one of the past experiences of the head of blockchain at GME, he had worked for a company called Loopring. Now, if you haven't heard of that, it was kind of like the first time I was really exploring this when I started digging in. It was actually an Ethereum marketplace, funny enough. And so this Ethereum marketplace, from my understanding and kind of what it looks like, and once again, even comparing what we had seen in the documentation, the AK so far, is that there appears to be maybe a push for some sort of digital marketplace. Now, this is kind of a mind-blowing concept because initially we thought that maybe this is kind of more of like a play akin to what we'd seen with Overstock and them trying to issue a crypto dividend to maybe try to circumvent and attack the short hedge funds. But now I'm starting to get a feeling there's a little bit more to this, that there might be maybe a play to try to introduce what would be known as a used digital marketplace. Now, of course, this is speculation right now, but if something like this was to take place, what a game changer that would be. Right?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Some last slight pivot to the whole digital transformation piece that GameStop is doing. I think that's a big piece that I wish we could talk about more, because you have to understand, we're going from a brick and mortar situation in GameStop's a traditional business sense to a literal transformation of themselves and also their business and the value add to that. We kind of have to start seeing that as a way for us to, as investors, as fanatics, kind of see, they've kind of given us a glimpse through, a window of what the opportunities, possibilities can be with this new digital transformation. I'm waiting to see what Amazon executives and the people that they've hired, they're actually very good marketing folks. I think that's kind of lacking in the GameStop's initial grain of how they've been doing things. And I think that's a good way things are moving along as well.
Yeah, and that brings us now to what, 5 ex-Amazon people?
I think so. 4 or 5. Yeah, it's
4 or 5. Yeah. I mean, like it clearly shows that there's some sort of initiative here that's taking place, right? That they are going to try to pursue this e-commerce space a little bit more aggressively. And like I said, the part that really fascinates me is this NFT piece. And as we had seen, there's the NFT page now. If you go to nft.gamestop.com, and I get the feeling that if this comes through, we're going to see a lot of those non-DRM games. So if anybody here is a gamer, you know that you can go to a site like GOG.com, for example, and buy a non-DRM free game. Now, if you're not familiar with that, what that means, that basically means that they give you a product key. That game is technically yours. Now, you might be wondering, well, I bought a PS5 game, I bought a Xbox game or whatever, or a game on Steam. Is that not my game? And the reality of that is that supposedly on paper, you're just leasing that game from them. They have the right to take that away from you. You can't resell it. It's technically not yours, really. And so buying non-DRM free, DRM free games is ultimately what's going to be, I think, really more wanted in the future, especially if something like this goes through, where they're giving you the ability to sell your digital key as like something like an NFT to another user and make money off of it.
And I think the used game market you also mentioned before, I think that is a big piece. If GameStop is able to take that, obviously digitize it, and then obviously monetize it as well, there's a lot of pieces there that you can kind of see where you are able to acquire a lot of businesses. There are a lot of small businesses that are there. So GameStop can actually take it to the next level there. Like there's GameFlip that I'm aware of that does buys and sells used games. I mean, it's very small market share, super small, but like the point is there's so many small places where you can create your own marketplace and start to move towards that as well, where they can potentially go. So there's there's that, and I think taking that alone and seeing what GameStop is doing with their in-person games selling and buying, moving it to literally to the cloud, right? Cloud journey, cloud transformation is what they're doing in a sense. And that's why you have Amazon. The reason Amazon isn't here is because of that. They're literally the market share of cloud, right? They have the most. So it's all lining up perfectly in my sense. If you really think about the value, why we're having these kind of conversations today.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. Overall, it bodes really well. I totally agree with that. To give a little bit more perspective from when I was there as well, internally at GameStop corporate, it seemed like the used segment was a pretty large one. I was fearful for what would happen during the pandemic, when, of course, when you're dealing with used products like a used controller or whatever else, how would that impact the business? Now, I do want to clarify, and a lot of people don't know this, is that when it came to used consoles or used any hardware at all, or games for that matter, it's not as simple as them taking the product away from you and then flipping it and putting it back on the shelf. That console that, for example, you give them, or a controller that you give them, gets actually sent to the refurbishment center. So they've got an entire center dedicated to fixing consoles. And I remember this is actually one of my better memories from when I was back back in the day, was I remember going into the warehouse and there was like pallets and pallets and pallets of Xboxes and PlayStation 3s, and it was just like to the ceiling, like massive amounts of them. And you have a whole bunch of different technicians there actually like flipping out parts. They're testing them, they're stress testing the consoles. For the controllers, same thing. They clean them out, they swap out components, they try to make them like new. But that being said, I was fearful for what would happen during the pandemic specifically, because people would have obviously a little bit more of, we'll say, what's the word I'm looking for here? Retraction, I guess, from wanting to buy used products. So this seems to me like it could be the answer to that. Yeah, for sure. I think the other big piece about with this business model change that they're going through is something that a lot of the companies that are brick and mortar have to go through. They have to have change. Change is the only constant. That's why you start to you have to grow. You can't just stay status quo or just be comfortable. And what they've done since last year, you can clearly see bringing in the right folks last year and into beginning of this year. There's a change that's uncomfortable for many people that's happening right now. Just by the stock price right now. I mean, look at it. Look what's happening with it. They're tanking it as much as they can, because they know, these shorters know that they're in for a ride. When all the dust is sort of settled from the initial news that's coming out from the earnings, the business model, the people that they've hired, the work that they're going to be putting in is going to speak for itself. You don't have to boast it enough. Or boasted more than what it is. Yeah, and I mean, how illogical what's happening right now as well, right? We're seeing the price fall down further as a result of it being laddered, despite a new CEO being announced and despite us having great earnings. These are things that just don't add up. And they do it intentionally, right? Is that there's always kind of this, approach by hedge funds that you sell the news, and the market in general has this kind of approach, but the news is bullish. So it doesn't make sense. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and introduce Lady Lovestonks here that I was talking about earlier, who is a valuable member of the Bullhouse group and a fantastic addition. So welcome, lady.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me in.
Yeah, absolutely. We're happy to have you. So is there any more thoughts that anybody has from what we had heard today? Because it seems like it was a pretty action-packed day. We had that shareholder meeting in the morning, which didn't seem like it told us too much. And then we had all these different filings that have come out in the afternoon now.
I got one. In the 10K filing filed today, GameStop has officially said on May 26, 2021, we have received a request from the staff of the SEC for a voluntary production of documents and information concerning an SEC investigation into the trading activity in our securities and the securities of other companies. We are in the process of reviewing the request and producing the requested documents and intend to cooperate fully with the SEC staff regarding this matter. This inquiry is not expected to adversely impact us. 2 days later, Ryan Cohen tweets the tombstone picture. Rest in peace, dumbass.
Just so we're clear, the report didn't say Ryan Cohen tweeted.
No,
Like
no.
everything. Because you were quoting the report up to a certain point, right?
Yeah, until the adversely impact us, the end quote. After that, 2 days later, Ryan Cohen tweeted, rest in peace, dumbass.
I don't have that tweet in front of me. Was that around the time he was near headquarters?
It's the 29th, yes. It's the 29th.
I believe so.
And on the 27th or the 28th, he tweeted a picture of himself in California, I believe it was, in a GameStop with another client.
See, we got to talk about that Arlington, Virginia picture in the GameStop, because I'm locally here in Virginia. I'm maybe 20 miles from Arlington here, and when I almost literally left the house and wanted to go to meet him, he was there, man. Like, so there's so much in that picture. I don't know if you guys have seen that. Well, not this picture, but yes, this is the one in the picture.
Yes.
There's another picture that he did when he was in the GameStop. There's so much in there. Sharkbait and I were just going crazy with all the different things, and there's too much. If you zoom into the picture, there's too much happening, and it's uncanny.
So we talked about this afterwards a little bit too. And one of the apes from Superstonk actually went back to that store the very next day. And sorry, Art, if you want to go back to that tweet where he's in the store. Yeah, this one here. So they said that the 2 games that had moved, so everything else was chronologically ordered, right, or alphabetically ordered. The only 2 that were moved was Crackdown 3 and Crash Bandicoot, which we see that Crash Bandicoot's kind of angled towards us here a little bit. Now, of course, this is all super tinfoil hat thinking here. We have no idea if any of this stuff's true, or if it was more of a clue as to regards to where he was, which happened to be very close to the SEC headquarters. But now that we're starting to combine kind of this information of this SEC investigation, doesn't seem so crazy anymore.
I mean, that picture speaks volumes if you look at everything in there. I know people have already dissected it 100 different ways, but
yeah,
it's no coincidence.
It's funny.
Yeah.
Now I'm worried about showing some of his other tweets here live on stream before we get booted by YouTube. But I do find this specific tweet here most interesting, which is that rip dumbass. I suspect that potentially we might have something else at play here, in the sense that a lot of people speculated that that's to do with a tombstone agreement, which could imply any number of things. But just to echo what Ryan Cohen had mentioned at the end of the shareholder meeting today, it was what his dad had told him, which was to buckle up, right? And so I think that there's a lot more that's going to take place in the next near future. I don't think we're anywhere near done with GameStop here and what the future is going to bring. So a lot to look forward to, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
Cool. So we were going to have a little bit more of a conversation surrounding some of the loyalty programs here as well. But I think, does anybody else have anything else that want to bring up, or anything else that's caught their eye recently?
I think there is one thing that I wanted to quickly touch on, the tombstone thing that you mentioned. And It is actually very cryptic in a sense.
Yes.
And it is to do with some sort of an announcement of solicitation to buy. It's just something that didn't sit well with me because I was excited and nervous at the same time when you mentioned it, because I was reading about it, what it meant. So I think we could look into what that means more and what does it say about Tombstone.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, something that has come up here, this is a little bit of an unrelated topic. We have some other documentations. I mean, we're still kind of digging through what everything that had come out in regards to the AKs, and then also in regards to the float that has voted. We're still digging through this information. Perhaps there's some more insights that we're going to pick up. As you apes have seen, we've kind of started deciphering this live on stream. So, this is just kind of our quick take on what we have seen so far. I know that the rest of the moderator team on Superstonk is also having a deep dive right now, and then they're talking about it. And so we'll have a little bit more to say over the next couple of days as to what exactly is going on. But what is kind of interesting here is basically what we have seen in regards to how quickly they've produced this data for us. So historically, they've never really released these AK forms that quickly to the shareholder meeting. So this is kind of the first time that we're seeing that, which is kind of interesting.
Shark, if I may interject. Yeah, to what you just said, my understanding was we would hear about it several days after the meeting, not in the afternoon of, right? So did they already know the numbers is the question on my mind, and they were just ready to publish?
Probably. I'm thinking that will be a very sound analysis of the thought process. I'm sure they had the information because they even released an additional prospectus today, right? For 5 million shares. So there's something more that we're not looking into. We can't dissect as of yet. There's something more.
Yeah. Not gonna lie, and this is gonna sound meta, I kind of like and not like how GameStop dropped all these documents in quick succession as we got onto this panel. Like, my phone was going off, and it's like, I've been conditioned when I get that email from GameStop investors to like stop what I'm doing, pull it up, and just give it a read over, right? But I feel like right now we're all making sense behind the scenes on documents, and I think we have one from Lady.
Yeah, so one of the questions is, in the 8K filing, the float vote shows 55 million people voted for the board. What does this mean in relation to the 70 million total float?
Yeah, does anybody want to take the question?
I don't know, but I'm looking at their prospectus, the latest one, and they actually said that their outstanding shares will be 76.8 million shares. It's going up. They're going to use the proceeds for general corporate purposes, as well as investing in growth initiatives and maintaining a strong balance sheet. It's in the report. I'm reading it right now.
How many reports were actually submitted in this past afternoon?
3.
7 or 8?
Yeah, because the prospectus that you're talking about isn't the one on the screen, is it?
No, it's the it's the latest one they put. There were a total of 6 documents they released. They released 3 different 4 different 8K reports, 1 10Q, and then 1 prospectus. And the 1 prospectus I'm looking at has that information that I was reading about their outstanding shares. It was an approved sale of 5 million shares on December 8th, 2020, and they're putting that into the overall outstanding shares. Looks like at the $300 value ish to raise more capital. and they're using it for, like I mentioned, we intend to use the net proceeds for this offering, if any, for general corporate purposes, as well as for investing in growth initiatives and maintaining a strong balance sheet. So I think it's all good from a standpoint of GameStop's overall look. It makes they've already wiped out their a good chunk of their debt, if not all of it. So it doesn't do anything to the stock, or it doesn't change our view for the GameStop's future.
Right, and something here that someone just has shared with us on the Discord is that there's an entire topic here about what voting rights do shorted shares have. I think that might be a little bit of a play here as well, is that, as we know, there's a lot of shares that were borrowed out. And so I genuinely start to wonder if there's maybe something else going on from that perspective. Is whether or not they have a voting right, that is.
Yeah, I think that's one of the parts why the crypto dividend might be a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because the thing is that I'm wondering right now is we're seeing 55 million have voted, right? I don't see a total tally of total votes in play right now, which is a totally different topic. And this is not me trying to have mental gymnastics or something like that. It's actually trying to figure out, like, they posted this really, really early. Normally it's 4 days or 5 days. I believe Lourdes in our mod group, she went into this and she found that it was earlier than normal. So, wait, I'm getting an update.
So you're saying that total number of shareholders takes about up to 4 days to come up with the total numbers, and you're saying we can get that information a little faster than 4 days.
Normally it gets posted 4 days after the quarterly earnings, yeah.
Got it. So Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday. So either Tuesday or by Wednesday next week, we'll have that information.
No, that's the 8K we received today, I believe. Normally that was the information that we would have gotten. Or the 10K, I'm sorry. I'm a lot of information stuff. And they also said in the 10K that our operations and financial results are subject to various risks and uncertainties, including these described in Part 1, Item 1A, Risk Factors, in our annual report on the 10K form for the year ended January 30, 2021, which could adversely affect our business, financial condition, result of operation, cash flow, and the trading price of our common and capital stock. There have been no material changes to our risk factor since our 2020 annual report in 10K. In other words, there has been no material change in our risk factor since 2020 annual report in the 10K. That means that everything they said about the short squeeze in their original 10K from last year is still relevant. So there is still a potential short squeeze for that, and all credit for this goes to Lourdes, by the way.
Yes, Lourdes is speaking in our ear, giving us information on the back end.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking earlier about the total votes we're seeing in the form right now in front of us. These are the votes that are cast. These are not the total votes or total shares in play. And I think that is a significant difference.
There was also a very interesting question that's been brought up a few times about this voting. There's the potential for it to have been normalized to what the outstanding issue is, where this is actually just a percentage, but not really, like, there's no confirmation on whether the brokers that are collecting votes are doing this or not. But that is a potential, given that we're so close to what the outstanding issue is. And the other thing that kind of stands out as interesting is under Proposal 3, where those 7.3 million broker non-votes are suddenly now votes.
And it's also something that comes back to the 10K that said on May 26 we received a request from the SEC, which if everything was up in order and everything was all right and everything was going accordingly and how it should go, why would there be an SEC probe investigation?
That's a really good point, honestly. And like same thing, right? Like what we're seeing on this form, if everything was fine, then there wouldn't be need for anything else, right? Like everything would be going according to plan, right? As we understand it.
Yep. Yeah, it would also be highly unusual that they would mention it in their official filings if it wasn't something that was significant. I don't know how often SEC requests are mentioned in 10K forums, but to me that seems fairly rare.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but normally, if a company, for example, I saw this earlier that, where is it? It was from Apple News, I believe. I don't have the link in front of me, but it basically said, the stock of GME is falling due to an SEC probe and failing quarterly earnings and stuff like that. While quarterly earnings are amazing, they're better than expected, they're better than pre-pandemic, and yet they're reporting it as it's not doing well. And the SEC is launching a probe, not into them, but they're launching a probe into something.
Yeah, it was approximately a 45% surprise to the upside for earnings. Just pretty significant.
Huge. That's huge.
If it's just sentiment, then you're not going to get much from the media. If you're looking for truth, you're going to get zero from the media. So
we've learned that, unfortunately. Yeah.
Right. So we got to take everything what MSM mainstream media says with a Himalayan salt, not even a grain of salt. We got to take that with something that doesn't make sense. So from what we've been discussing here, I think there's more to come with the votes. I think we need to look into a little bit more on that document, that particular 8K form, to see what that actually means. Because the only way for us to get a clear answer of how many shareholders we do have, that piece is missing still. How many shareholders own GameStop today?
I got a message from the side on Reddit, and I'm going to need everyone's help here because certainly when I try to decipher it, I'm a bit slow. But it's a message that says, if you add up the votes, it's only slightly less than the free float. Wes, Christian, said in his recent AMA that in the case of an overvote, vote counts can get capped. So it's the idea of us, having close to that mark that could be coincidental, but it's interesting, right?
Okay. Yeah, I had that consideration as well. Is there just simply a limit that we hit of some sort of plateau, right?
So,
and
the follow-up comment is, if Wes is right and vote counts do get capped in the event of an overvote, for all we know, we could have hit 500 million. We just don't know that. But the idea that what we see on paper is so close to what that theoretical cap is before they triggered something, right?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get at with saying the votes are normalized. So, like, say there were 500 million votes, they just take each vote as 1/10, and then you have exactly the numbers we're seeing. Now, there's no real way to prove this without doing an investigation into the brokers, though, and that may be what that SEC reference is doing, where they're actually going into the brokers themselves and seeing what people have entered and seeing who owns what and all those sort of things that we want anyway. But without the evidence, like there is no hard proof on that.
I think it just hit me.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Are we going to
No, you have your
Okay, I'll finish it and then I'll pass it over.
Finish it.
Right. And now it's overhyped because I was just going to say, it just occurred to me what was said earlier about an investigation in progress. Like, I'm actually digesting that now. Right? Like, we quickly jumped over to the Ryan Cohen meme and said, oh my gosh, he was, within geographic reach. But now it's like, well, hold up. There's actually something going on behind the scenes. So, all right, lady, over to you.
I'm so sorry. Well, I just wanted to ask a question that Kato had asked earlier that said about non-votes aside, is there any way brokers to suppress the true number of votes?
Yes.
Yes, there is. Mm-hmm. I think that's a major concern here, is that there is 100% a way to suppress the votes, and they have done that historically. We don't need to go looking too far. We had seen what Ado was talking about prior to him leaving, is that when you compare all the votes from previous years, there's just math that doesn't line up, right? Like, how is it possible that we've fallen when we had a bigger initiative than ever? GameStop has never had this much attention on their shareholder meetings prior in any time in history, and especially not when I was there. I had never seen that, right? This is such an anomaly to what we're seeing today. One piece that I did want to mention is just like to put into context how great these earnings have been. So new console cycles are always strong for GameStop. I mean, what a time frame for all of this to be happening right now. But what I want to mention is that Q1 historically for GameStop has always been the weakest quarter by far. Makes sense. Christmas has just ended. People don't want to spend money, so on. But the fact that they're seeing a lift, right, and a substantial one at that, for where we are right now, makes me incredibly bullish. I think that the part that we haven't really talked about is just how much in free marketing this has granted them. There's no amount of money they'd ever be able to spend to give them the amount of organic attraction as they have currently. So I want to make that very clear here, like that's a massive piece of all this.
Yeah, and also with again, you saying it's not lining up with the actual people, because if we only take, for example, our sub, we have people who have a single digit, 2 digits, 3 digits. We have 4 digits. I personally know somebody who has between 5 and 6 digits somewhere. Thank God the options. So that doesn't line up. And also, now that I'm looking at the, wait, let me entirely get sure with that. It's the rule 425B5. Sorry, I scrolled up too far. It actually says, our common stock on the New York Stock Exchange ranged from as low as 1994 and as high as 347.51 on a daily trading volume, ranged from approximately 1.79 million to 197.2 million.
Wow. Okay.
Well, that's just a historical range, though.
Yeah, but it's the daily range, daily trading volume that ranged between 1.7 million and almost 200 million.
Yeah, so that was between Jan 11th to June 8th. And so that's a big range, almost 6 month range. Majority of it was, in at the end of, probably towards the beginning, the middle of January to the end of January, that big spike we saw. And in March.
The timing is funny here, because I wrote a couple posts yesterday looking at volume over the last 6 months. And yes, I want to stress, while the range is very broad and extremely exciting, it was concentrated in late January. And sure, there have been spikes since, but you got to remember, there were a few weeks where volume was dry.
Yeah, February.
Last week or the week before, when we had the run up, our 2-day average I saw was 1 million and 3 million for a day.
Mm-hmm.
2 different days. That's nothing. And one day, I think towards 2 o'clock, it was around 700,000. Pathetic, I would say.
Yeah.
Drying up. Which I love the analogy that I use for GameStop. Right? If the volume is drying up, picture it's like a tsunami. Before a storm hits, you have the shoreline receding, right? You see the waves sort of receding. You can basically see the shoreline. What usually happens before a tsunami? You literally see, the beach kind of disappear, right? The water disappear before the tsunami hits. So I'm using that analogy still. I don't think we've seen true volume with GME yet. I don't think they've covered enough. If they have started to cover a little bit, they haven't covered enough. And when we do start the covering happen, it's going to be back to these volumes that somebody was mentioning here.
Yeah, totally agreed. And I just want to make a quick call out here. We had reached 277 in the price. We just went back down to 275.90. So we see that we're slowly starting to recover from the laddering attempt. There was that initial shell shock. I think that there's a lot of things being announced and people don't know what to think. But as the news slowly starts to settle in and people have time to sift through all the filings, I feel bullish about what we're going to see moving forward. Once again, I do want to call out that we still have these massive amount of puts that are out of the money still that we have to look forward to, and that's going to have a massive implication in and itself. So a lot, I think, to expect in the next little while, including the NFT piece, including new information from this new CEO, and so on.
Yeah, about the NFT piece, you said you looked into that for a little bit. Can you? I don't know a lot about it. What can you tell me about it?
Yeah, so for anybody who's not familiar with NFTs, this is kind of like a new topic for you. They stand for non-fungible tokens, I believe is the exact acronym for it, which basically have been used now and for the last year or so to sell artwork, that you would have some sort of like ownership over that digital artwork. Now, because it's built up on Ethereum, there's a specific address that is associated with it, so that if you sell it to anybody else, you can see who then owns it and how much they bought it for. And same thing vice versa. They can see how much you bought it for. And so they're able to offer up a price. And so essentially the main concept here is with the gaming market is that when all of a sudden you think about license keys for video games as a non-fungible token, it starts to make a lot of sense really quickly as to what they might be trying to do, right?
So what?
Sorry, go ahead.
So basically, you're telling me that with NFT technology, I could basically copy Steam, but instead of just buying games, I can say, you know what, I'm not playing this game. It's in demand right now. I can sell this.
That's exactly it. And that's kind of how I'm interpreting everything, as alongside the acquisition of this head of blockchain that GameStop has made. There's a very strategic reason why they brought in an entire person, an entire department to do these things. Same thing, if you go to nft.gamestop.com, scroll to the very bottom, you start to realize they're looking for people. Like, they're expanding this out, right? This isn't going away anytime soon. This isn't just something that they've randomly come up with. They're actively trying to hire for this.
Yeah. That game that you're playing here is super fun, man.
Right?
It's super addicting.
Yeah, kept me busy for a while. But just to add to what Sharkbait just said, regarding this standard token that basically GameStop has created, they have already created an NFT token using the ERC 721 standard token, which is the standard token used for safe transfer of a cryptocurrency. And this is a big deal if they've already started to do this, which basically means that it allows them to start doing actual safe transfer using the Ethereum blockchain. Like I mentioned earlier, Ethereum seems to be the chosen blockchain technology for GameStop, and it just seems to be more in the public eye that it's getting more adoption. And it just seems to me personally that it's moving towards a direction where Ethereum potentially could take over as the cryptocurrency for the future.
Dude, I totally agree with that. And the part that really makes me think about this on a larger scale is that if GameStop pulls this off, it will be the first commercial application of NFTs, which doesn't exist. I mean, like, they sell artwork, but not as an actual product.
No, that's true. And, there's already plenty of different marketplaces NFTs already that are out. But with GameStop potentially going, again, digital transformation happening, used games, you take used games, use it as a way to sell your used games as an NFT, I mean, think about that model, the revenue that's going to happen. Like, it's going to shoot up. Like NFT game changer with GameStop. Like, it goes from, they say power to the players. It's way more than that. It's power to this whole movement. It's like first when cloud came out. When first cloud came out towards the mid 2000, I would say it was the first time I really got into it. And more around the 2012, 2013 time is when AWS really started to shoot up with their cloud services. It's similar situation where blockchain technology and cryptocurrency has always been in the world for years, but this advancement of technology, how secure it is to send and transfer these tokens. If GameStop is going into the gaming space, I see something more exciting as far as a potential merger coming up.
I think so too. Oh, we got a new tweet from Roaring Kitty. Let's see what it is. Is there sound on this?
Yeah.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It's a swear word. That's it.
Okay. We can handle it, I think.
Yeah, fuck.
Classic. That's overall.
Any idea on source?
Yeah, what is that
I'm
from?
guessing this is talking about after hours.
Love it. Yeah, so I mean, obviously he's probably not too happy with us getting laddered down, but I mean, honestly, like what we're talking about with the NFT piece, what we're talking about with the SEC investigation for the voting, I mean, apes, we couldn't have expected that this is going to be an easy path, right? What we're suggesting at this point is the takedown of multiple hedge funds, right, that are worth hundreds of billions and collectively trillions of dollars. It was never going to be simple. So, for me personally, I'm going to stay strong here. Strategy for me has always been the same as always. I'm just going to buy and hold, and that's not going to change. And ultimately, I think that the one thing that we should carry on is what Ryan Cohen left us with, which is to buckle up, because I think that there's going to be a lot more to come.
Well said.
Yeah.
And so now we're reaching 277 on the price. I suspect we might be able to crack back into 280, and yeah, we'll keep going from there. Oh, it's 279 now. Are we going to see 280 here soon? Probably.
Ooh, Shark, I had a question.
Yes.
You said, and I'm learning about like this term of buy the news, sell the rumor, or vice versa, right? But you said earlier that because there's confusion based on all these reports coming out, that's why the price is going down. Can you explain, if for no one else but me, what the mechanics behind that is?
Yeah, so it's funny that GameStop had made this choice to release everything at once, and I genuinely wondered if it was perhaps an idea that they had to release everything at once to have the market go into shock for like one single moment, and then get everything out of the way to have a clear run-up. Right, that's kind of was my original thinking here, because alternatively, what they could have possibly done is they could have waited for the 8K report about the CEO to come out today, alongside the earnings report, and then released 4 days later, or however long they were talking about, into next week, release the voting information to have a second opportunity to ladder it down one more time. Right, so we know that the short hedge funds, they're looking for any opportunity they can find to start attacking the stock. So if they just release everything at once, it becomes this one shell shock. Okay, well, at least we got it all out of the way, right? Any sort of excuses or any sort of FUD that would be tried to be generated as a result of all this is now out of the way. And so now, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, to add to your list, because there's the report, there's the new announcement of CEO and CFO, and now there's the confirmation, like for sure, of Ryan Cohen being chairman.
Oh yeah, So I mean, like, it's strange that they confirmed everything all within a couple hours time frame, and we've been just getting bombarded, and like we still haven't had the opportunity to really go through every single filing, and so it's probably by intention. That's my thought. There's no way GameStop did this all accidentally. They probably had it all released within like a 2-hour window for a good reason. And now, once again, I'm looking at the price here. We're already at 281. I don't know how else you interpret this, right? Other than they wanted to just shell shock the community and then have it go for a free run after that.
I mean, I've been doing a lot of SEC diving and looking in, and you don't really see usually multiple 8K reports reported on the same day. We have 4 8K reports. Now, we also know that GameStop has not said anything in these 5 months. I have heard radio silence as far as any reports that have come out that much. Yeah. And I honestly think they just wanted to wait until releasing all this information. I mean, they've released information here and there as far as insider trading, people selling here and there, a couple other 8K reports that they had to, but the majority of the changes that they've always been telling us, it's been a very calculated way of them reporting all these 8Ks in one time. Because usually when they do 8K, they seldom have a prospectus. Prospectus is always released either prior or after a release of a major financial report, like an 8K or 10Q.
Yeah, and I just want to add in on top of that. I've never seen them do it this way. I've at all in the industry. I very rarely see a company drop this much information in the span of a couple hours. I can only imagine there was a strategic reason for it.
Yeah, I can't see why else they would do everything in such a rapid succession, because we kind of expected to get the news of the CEO during the shareholder meeting. We kind of expected to hear the new CFO during the entire meeting this afternoon, but we heard nothing. And then suddenly after market close, oh, by the way, here's an information dump. I mean, this is normally I'm all good with when a form comes out and scouting through it, and the other mods are as well. For example, Legalese has been a tremendous help, as has been Lourdes and BT and everybody else. But now we're most likely going to spend days as an entire group combing through everything that they dropped today, because it's so much information in there that, for example, I didn't even notice the SEC probe at first. Lourdes had to basically poke me from, hey, look at this. And after that, I noticed the date on that sort of coming 2 days before Ryan Cohen's rest in peace dumbass tweet. And there are a lot of little things that you have to look about. And normally it's okay because you have one form, and yeah, okay, it's one form, doesn't matter. It's usually 30 to 40 pages. You go through it and that's no problem really. But this is so much information to go through that we're going to be spending most likely into the weekend to decipher all of this.
Right on. So, sorry, I'm just going to interject here. So I think Lady Lovestonk has a little bit more details as to what DFE's tweet was about. Do you have any theories here so far?
Well, no, but I do have, actually, I was looking on Twitter because, I tend to go find my information everywhere on the internet. So Dapper Dopper on Twitter responded to Roaring Kitty, and it's Topher Grace is the actor from Black Mirror episode entitled Smithereens. And I do believe it is about a CEO, but I don't remember. I do remember watching it, but I can't tell you the details surrounding it. I don't remember exactly, and I don't want to say without, providing misinformation.
I'm reading.
Oh yeah, it says it right there. Okay.
Yeah, I'm reading about it, and it was a very riveting episode. I remember watching it.
So we'll have something to watch through here and maybe speculate a little bit.
Wait,
okay, everybody.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Oh, whoever
Just
I
catch
do
the
remember
tail
the
end of that
scene.
first paragraph. So in the episode, The Rideshare Driver, just tail end of the first paragraph at the top, please. Scroll just a bit more. Okay. Making a demand to contact the company's CEO. Okay. Nope.
So I do remember that particular scene in the TV show, and I believe it's when he has been on a retreat. The CEO is on a retreat. He's trying to do a meditative thing, and he actually gets a phone call, which he instructed everybody not to call him during this time, and that's when he gets a phone call about stuff going on, and that's when he swears.
Right. Actually, I'm starting to remember now. I think I recall this episode, and then he was like talking on like a long distance line, trying to negotiate with somebody, right?
It's a social media app that they're using. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, I think he takes somebody hostage or something. I don't know.
This was a
very
freaky
weird.
episode. Oh,
Yeah,
lie.
interesting.
Yeah. Well.
Okay, guys. Well, on that note, we're approaching the 2-hour mark here, and we've covered a lot of different content. We've got bombarded with new filings, which we still have to go fully through. And so we're going to take them a little bit of time as a community, I think, to decipher what everything was said and why it was all dropped in on one day, and what the sentiment moving forward will be. To me, as of right now, as of the earnings call today, I feel very strongly about where we're headed and where we currently stand. And I think that these SEC investigations are going to tell us a little bit more in the near future. DFE is going to keep tweeting, as we have seen. And we're just going to take the advice of Ryan Cohen and buckle in for the ride. All right, guys.
Sure. Yeah.
On
I just
that
want to
note,
say, like, this
Yep,
is your
go for it.
first running of monkey business, right?
That is
And
correct. Yep.
I saw the disclaimers. It said that there's no structure or format in place. It's like a work in progress. I think this is great, right? I think it's like a hub where, we saw Discord comments, Red comments, and it's just, you have a place where you can bring together different perspectives and just talk in live time. And what a way to start things off on this day, right? So.
Yes, and thank you to all of you guys as well. So ultimately, I do want to leave everybody with this message, is that Monkey Business, what we had, the little segment here that we had set up, this is going to be taking place on a regular basis. And we're going to have guests come in from all over Superstonk. And so if you've written some interesting DD that you feel like you want to come on the show and talk about, please feel free to send the mods a message. We'll let that one slide, or send me a message on Twitter. And I'll have a read through your DD and reflect with the other moderators as well. And maybe we'll have you guys come on the show as well.
Yeah, I'd love to have this as a regular thing, talk to people and go over stuff, because if one thing has shown to be correct, it's that the hive mind mentality of, hey guys, we have a question, and 300,000 people jumping into that question, we find the answers within minutes instead of days.
Yes, exactly. So thank you once again to everybody, and we'll see you next week. Bye now.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye,
Bye,
thank
everyone.
you.